Hello everyone, and welcome to Quiz and Hers, the podcast where we test each other's knowledge and the strength of our relationship. I am Hallie, and today I will be the quiz mistress asking the questions. And Justin here, my fiance, will be the quizzy.
Yes.
I'm the quizzer, he's the quizzy.
Correct.
Anyway, for those of you who are new to the podcast, the way this works is that one of us, the quizmaster or quizmistress, asks the other person 6 questions. The themes of the questions are arts and literature, sounds and screens, times and places, sports and games, science, and everything else, which could literally be anything else that does not fit into one of those categories.
Yep.
And all of the 6 questions actually revolve around a central theme, which we choose and which the other person does not know.
Correct.
Ready?
I'm ready.
Did I miss anything?
Short discussions after each question, so we can all learn a little bit more about each topic. And you're up 3-0, but this is the first game I'm playing this season, so that's not really a fair evaluation.
No, it's not.
Okay.
But I'll take it.
All right, fine.
Got to take my lead. All right, so the theme of this week's episode is called Weapon of Choice.
The Fatboy Slim song with the Christopher Walken video, the second greatest music video in history. Fight me, internet.
No, the entire episode is not about that song, but it's a good reference.
Damn.
It's about weapons.
Weapons. Okay.
I just like the name Weapon of Choice.
And I like that music video very much.
I know
Everyone
you
should
do.
go watch it. It's fantastic.
Yes, go watch it.
All right.
All right, question 1, arts and literature.
Okay.
Which Irish-American painter, born in 1848, known for still lifes with a 3-dimensional appearance, painted After the Hunt, which featured a large rifle, and The Faithful Colt, which of course features a Colt firearm?
Okay. Irish-American painter, still lifes.
Do you notice you like to repeat little portions of my question?
Well, I'm trying to cleave it down to the parts that actually are important.
All of it's important.
All right. Well, some of it's more important than others.
Well, I would say After the Hunt is probably his most famous painting. The whole thing's important.
I've heard of After the Hunt, but I'm not sure who painted it. Oh, boy.
If it wasn't important, I wouldn't say it.
That's not
Think
true.
about that.
A lot of times you have to say something completely unimportant just to connect it to the theme.
All right, fine.
I think I ought to know this, but I'm not sure if I do. I don't know. I should, but I don't.
The answer is William Harnett.
Harnett. Okay.
You want to hear about him?
Yes, I do. I know nothing about him.
Okay. William Michael Harnett was born in County Cork, Ireland, around the time of the potato famine, and so his family moved to Philadelphia while he was still an infant. I actually know about him because several of his paintings are on display at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and I saw a still life exhibit there a couple of years ago, and they had a ton of his paintings, including the old violin, which I have on a magnet on our fridge.
Damn it.
Do you remember which magnet I'm talking about?
Yes, I can picture that magnet.
We're not in the
our
kitchen,
fridge.
so you can't see it. But.
No, but I know exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, so I collect a magnet every time I go to an art exhibit, and from that still life exhibit, I chose that one. So he has a special place in my heart. His paintings are very cool.
Damn it.
Yeah. I actually didn't remember his name prior, so I should probably know the names of the paintings and the artists that are on my refrigerator.
Probably.
I should get on that.
I have Nighthawks by Edward Hopper on there. It's one of my favorite paintings.
Yeah, I think the only one I have that isn't from an exhibit is La Grande Jatte, Syrah, just because that's my favorite painting.
We've seen that, though.
Yeah, but it wasn't this is all when they have a special exhibit at the museum. I go to the gift shop at the end and I pick my favorite painting from the exhibit.
This is all scintillating radio, I'm sure.
People are getting a glimpse into our lives. It's interesting. I don't know.
I don't think it is.
Okay, but maybe it's something different for people who don't want to just hear me ramble.
All right, continue rambling.
All right, I will go. His first job as a teenager was engraving designs on silver dishes, which I didn't know was a job. But I guess back in the day when silver dishes were a big thing.
You couldn't mass produce things.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is like the mid-1800s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at that time, he also took classes at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. He later took some classes in New York at Cooper Union and at the National Academy of Design. He began to create oil paintings when he was around 28, and he debuted fruit still lifes at the National Academy and the Brooklyn Art Association. So his first paintings were mostly those basic fruit ones.
The things that everybody does. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So he then moved back to Philadelphia, and in 1880 he was able to get enough money by selling his paintings to travel abroad. He worked for a private patron in Frankfurt for about 6 months, and then settled in Munich, where he worked for about 3 years. He applied to the Munich Royal Academy, but was rejected, so he went back to New York in 1886. Later in life, he had rheumatism and kidney disease, so he was unable to paint for long periods of time. He tried hard to find treatment and went to Hot Springs, Arkansas in 1887 and Wiesbaden, Germany in 1889, and he checked into New York City hospitals at least 4 times, and then he eventually died in New York City in 1892. And then I'll just tell you about his art now.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know, I kind of just wanted to talk about him first and then the
Sure.
art.
Yeah.
So his art is mostly done in a style, which I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Trompe l'oeil.
Trump loyal?
No. It does sound like that.
How do you spell that?
TROMPE-L''OEIL. I'm assuming the OL part has to do with oil. I don't know. I didn't get the
Presumably.
direct translation.
Huh.
But it uses realistic imagery to create an optical illusion that the image is 3-dimensional. So look up his paintings and you'll see that they all use a shadow to create that 3D look, and everything looks very realistic.
Yeah.
Like, almost like a photo, in my opinion. Raphael Peale started this art form in America in the early 19th century. Unlike most of the other artists who did this kind of work, Harnett painted more unconventional objects, such as a horseshoe, a set of books on top of a crate, and the firearms that were mentioned in the question.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them were just doing fruit and
Right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he kind of changed it up.
Okay.
And today his art is displayed in over 20 museums, like the Philadelphia Museum.
Yeah.
And that's Harnett.
Cool.
Ready?
Yep.
Question 2. The category is everything else. As most Marvel fans know, the name of Thor's hammer is Mjolnir.
Mm-hmm.
In Norse mythology, Thor's father, Odin, has his own weapon called Gungnir. What type of weapon is it?
It's a spear.
Yes, it is a spear. If he knew that.
I know my mythology.
He does know his mythology. I figured you would know, but that's okay. So, there's not really much specifically to say about Gungnir, but I figured this would be a good opportunity to discuss Norse mythology, which I really know very little about, aside from anything included in the Marvel movies.
Yeah, Norse mythology comes up a lot. Not quite as much as like Greek and Roman, but pretty often, so it's worth knowing.
Yeah, and it seems like it's more condensed than Greek and Roman. Like, people don't know as many gods and goddesses.
Yeah, it's a smaller pantheon.
Which I will talk about now.
Okay.
So Norse mythology comes from the myths of the North Germanic people as part of Norse paganism, and continued after the Christianization of, I said that weird, Christianization of Scandinavia. Most of Norse mythology is detailed in the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda. In Norse mythology, the cosmos consists of 9 worlds around Yggdrasil, which is a central cosmological tree. As you may know from the Thor movies, Asgard is the realm of the Norse gods.
Yeah.
Midgard is the home of the humans, which is equivalent to Earth in the mythology. Also in the movies.
Yeah. Do you know that's where J.R.R. Tolkien got the name Middle-earth? Because that's what Midgard means, like middle world or Middle Earth.
I did know that. I didn't mention it, so.
Yeah, I just think that's a cool fact.
Yeah. A couple of the other realms are Jotunheimer, home of the Jotnar, who are giants, and Niflheim, a world of ice and snow.
Yep.
And then there are obviously others,
Yep.
because there are 9. In Norse mythology, the afterlife is very complex. There's the realm called Hel, spelled H-E-L, which is ruled over by a female of the same name, and I'm assuming this is where they got Hela from in the movie Thor Ragnarok, so
Yep.
That's what I'm picturing now.
Kate Blanchett with the weird spiky crown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is also Valhalla, which is Odin's martial hall, to which those slain in battle are ferried by Valkyries. Others slain in battle are brought by Freyja to her afterlife field called Folkvanger. And then there's like all these other afterlife things happening, but those are like the big ones.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to talk about the more famous Norse gods. Of course, Thor is the most popular god. He beats many Jotnar who are enemies of the gods or humanity. He is married to the beautiful golden-haired goddess Sif, who is associated with fertility, family, and wedlock. That's different in the movie.
Quite.
I should stop comparing it. Anyway, Odin is portrayed as one-eyed, surrounded by wolves and ravens, and always carrying his spear, which I mentioned, Gungnir.
Yep.
He is associated with death, wisdom, and poetry, and is said to have hanged himself on the cosmologic tree Yggdrasil to get knowledge of the runic alphabet to give to humanity. So,
yeah.
Odin's wife is Frigg, who can apparently see the future but won't tell anyone. So that's kind of lame.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Lame. Like, what's the point? All right. Odin and Frigg have a son called Baldur, Baldr, whose death is engineered by Loki and who lives in Hell. Loki is the father of Hel, the wolf Fenrir, and the world serpent Jormungandr. The names in this are a struggle. Jormungandr. Just like Loki in the MCU, he sometimes helps the gods and sometimes acts maliciously towards them. And he's also a shapeshifter.
Yep.
But the whole family tree is different than
Yeah.
the movie, so don't just assume.
Yeah, no, it's a lot different.
Right. So Freyja, who I mentioned earlier, is a sorceress who is beautiful and has a feathered cloak. Her brother Freyr is associated with the weather, royalty, human sexuality, and agriculture. So, like, everything.
Mm-hmm.
He supposedly brings peace and pleasure to humanity. Freyja and Freyr's father, I can't say this, Njoror, NJ, I don't know how you say NJ. Njoror is strongly associated with ships and seafaring, as well as with wealth and prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
Heimdallr, who I assume Heimdall from the MCU is based on.
Yeah, it's just a different way of transliterating it.
Okay. He has foreknowledge and keeps watch for the onset of Ragnarok. Ragnarok, just like the same movie that we mentioned, is the death of many of the major gods, including Thor, Odin, Loki, and even Heimdallr.
Yep.
Heimdallr lives in Himmelbjorg, where the rainbow bridge called the Bifrost meets heaven. He is supposedly the originator of social classes among humans. I don't know, that seems like a bad thing, but...
It was probably considered a necessity at the time, I would think.
Yeah. So, it's a good way of explaining it, I guess.
Yeah.
According to Norse mythology, the first human couple was called Ask and Embla, who were originally driftwood found by a few gods and imbued life in the form of 3 gifts. This kind of sounds like a combination of Adam and Eve and also Jesus with the 3 gifts thing. So that was interesting. After Ragnarok, a similar thing happens when 2 humans survive from a wood. They are called Lif and Lifpressur, and they sort of repopulate humanity after Ragnarok.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Norse mythology has many references in pop culture, not just the MCU, which we've already mentioned roughly 100 times.
Yep.
In addition to Marvel Comics, characters such as Odin, Thor, and Loki show up in Neil Gaiman's Sandman graphic novel.
Yep.
It has also come up in many manga and anime series. Also, J.R.R. Tolkien admitted that it influenced his novels, which you mentioned in terms of Middle-earth.
Mm-hmm.
Many fantasy TV shows reference Norse mythology, such as Game of Thrones, Xena the Warrior Princess, and Doctor Who. Fun fact, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs by the Brothers Grimm is actually a telling of Norse mythology, based on a story when Freya goes to Svartalfheim to ask the dwarves to make her a magical necklace.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, I knew some of that, but not as much as I thought I would, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Cool. It wasn't everything.
No, yeah, there's more to it. But yeah, I mean, as someone who thinks of mythology as one of his strong suits in trivia, I didn't know as much of that as I thought I would. So, cool.
Yep.
Nice.
But you still got the question.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it was an easy question. All right, question 3. Times and places.
Okay.
The National Firearms Act, enacted in 1934, is considered Title II of the U.S. federal firearms laws. What act that mainly focuses on interstate commerce in firearms is considered Title I of the U.S. federal firearms laws?
Huh. Is this something that I would have heard of? Or is this one of those questions I'm not supposed to get to keep the scores down?
I would say you probably have heard of it, but you might not think of it.
Alright.
You probably haven't thought about it.
Okay.
Why am I even telling you this? No hints.
Fine. So, it's a law about, like, selling guns, like, across state lines, I guess. I don't know.
you want to guess?
I don't know where to start guessing.
You want me to just tell you?
Yeah.
It's literally called the Gun Control Act.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Which is interesting because it seems so obvious, but no one knows the details of this.
I don't think I've ever actually heard of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I figured, what is an episode about weapons without a discussion about gun control?
Yeah.
I will try not to get too political here or bring up any personal opinions on the matter, just more of an overview of the topic.
Yeah, okay.
So most countries around the world have restrictive policies regarding firearms. These jurisdictions usually restrict access to certain categories of firearms and restrict who can get a license to carry them. The term gun control encompasses the regulation of firearm manufacture, transport, possession, use, and trade. It mainly applies to the weapon class called small arms, which includes pistols, revolvers, rifles, and also submachine guns and light machine guns.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those don't sound too small to me, but what do I know?
Basically a gun that you could probably lift with one hand if you had to.
Yes, that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So, as of 2007, there were roughly 875 million small arms owned by civilians, armed forces, and law enforcement agencies. That's around the world.
Mm-hmm.
75% of those were held by civilians, and of those, about 40% were held by Americans.
Okay.
Gangs and non-state armed groups have about 1.4% of small arms globally. So, it's a very small percentage.
Yeah, okay.
When you think about it.
Yeah, it's lower than I would have thought.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, just a fact.
Interesting.
So, a 2011 study found that a major difference among gun control in different countries is that some countries view gun ownership as a right while others see it as a privilege. They studied about 28 countries and they found that most of them see it as a privilege, but the United States and Yemen were unique in that they believe it is a basic right, and so their laws for civilian gun ownership are more permissive than other places.
Huh. Okay.
So it's just kind of interesting that it's us and Yemen.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. In 1934, the National Firearms Act was enacted in the United States as an act of Congress. This is what I was talking about in the question.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for it at the time was because of the gangland crime during the Prohibition era in the U.S., like the Valentine's Day Massacre, as well as the attempted assassination of FDR in 1933. The act imposes a statutory excise tax on the manufacture and transfer of certain firearms, and mandates the registration of the firearms.
Mm-hmm.
If you're wondering, an excise tax is one in which the tax is levied at the time of manufacture, not at the time of sale.
Ah. Oh, I didn't realize that's what that meant.
Yeah, I figured I should probably explain it since I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah, that's a term I've definitely heard. I guess I just never thought about what it actually meant. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, also, all transfers of firearms must be done through the National Firearms Registration.
Yeah.
The categories of weapons regulated by this act are known as NFA firearms and include machine guns, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, suppressors, and destructive devices. So, these are just categories. Like, I think suppressors are the same as silencers.
Well, yeah, they're properly called suppressors because they don't actually silence anything. They make it less loud.
Right.
It's not like how it works in the movies.
And then destructive devices were like grenades and things.
Uh-huh.
Violations of this act are punishable by up to 10 years in prison and forfeiting all firearms that are in violation, which makes sense.
Yeah.
The act is enforced by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, also known as ATF.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so on to the Gun Control Act.
I found it strange that the same people who are in charge of keeping guns out of the hands of maniacs are also the ones policing liquor stores and tobacco sales. It's just such a strange combination to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm sure they're just separate branches. They probably don't do much.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's probably different people working on different ones. It's just, I find it strange that it's in the same,
grouping.
The same agency.
Yeah, that doesn't really make sense.
Anyway,
the Gun Control Act of 1968 was signed into law by LBJ and is also enforced by the ATF.
Mm-hmm.
The passage of this act was prompted by the assassination of John F. Kennedy in 1963. The rifle used to shoot Kennedy was purchased by mail order from an ad in the magazine called American Rifleman. So the act banned mail order sales of rifles and shotguns and prohibited most felons, drug users, and those deemed mentally incompetent from buying guns.
Mm-hmm.
So if you'll notice, the theme is presidents either getting assassinated or attempting.
When someone takes a shot at a president, then we enact new gun control laws. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah, that makes sense.
It does make sense. It's just interesting that that's what has to happen in order for these laws to be passed.
That's what'll shake up politicians, is politicians getting shot.
Yeah,
so
it hits home, I guess.
Understandable, I guess.
Yeah.
In a weird kind of way.
Yeah. So, more recently, in 2003, the CDC published a report evaluating the effectiveness of gun violence prevention strategies, and they said that there is not enough evidence to determine the effectiveness of any of the laws.
Mm.
So, definitely, they said, we got to work on that.
Right.
Also, in recent years, smart guns have been developed or planned, and they only fire when in the hands of the owner.
Yeah, I've heard of this. They have like fingerprint readers built in, right?
Yeah, so
Wasn't one of the Bond movies recently?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen anything since Quantum of Solace.
I think it was in Skyfall. And it doesn't matter. Keep going.
No, not really. Okay. So advocates say this would prevent accidental firings by children and also prevent, someone grabbing the gun and using it against the owner.
Right, yeah. Smith
& Wesson was going to make one in 2000, but the NRA nearly drove them out of business and forced them to drop their plans.
Wow.
Yeah. And then again in 2014, there was a Maryland company that had started production, but they were getting death threats and stuff, so they stopped. So I don't think there really is a smart gun
on the market, yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm. So the most recent Gallup poll I could find on this topic was in October 2015, in which 55% of people said that the laws on the sales of firearms should be more strict. However, 72% opposed civilian handgun bans. So obviously this is still a huge national debate, and we'll all just have to see if they pass any other legislation, and that's it.
Okay.
Ready for question 4?
I'm ready.
All right. It's sports and games.
Okay.
All right. What game's most notable weapons are Ashbringer, a dwarf-forged sword wielded by Alexandros Mograine, Gorehowl, an axe that belonged to Grom Hellscream, and Ironfoe, a hammer wielded by Franclorn Forgewright?
Okay. So, it's some kind of, like, fantasy, probably like an RPG, it sounds like. Baldur's Gate?
No.
Okay.
Do you want to know the answer?
Yes, I do.
It's World of Warcraft.
Okay.
Yeah, you're one out
for
4.
Yeah. You could have said what massively multiplayer online game.
No, it's literally the only one. Okay, it's not the only one.
No,
it's the biggest one. It's the first one you would think of if I said...
Yes, there's tons of them.
The first sentence of my discussion is World of Warcraft is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game.
Yeah.
That was released in 2004 by Blizzard Entertainment.
Yeah.
I thought about saying one of those things, but I knew that would be too much of a hint.
All right.
It is the 4th game in the Warcraft fantasy universe and takes place within the Warcraft world of Azeroth. It took 4 to 5 years to build the game.
Yep.
It was designed to have an open environment so that players can basically do whatever they want and all quests are optional.
Yeah.
The game combines elements of sci-fi, fantasy, and steampunk. When one starts the game, they choose a realm, which is actually a server. The choices are normal or RP, meaning role-playing, and it focuses more on the player's role-playing and character.
Okay.
So I think there's more character building involved.
I see.
Yeah. So once they choose that, they choose whether to be part of the Alliance or the Horde, which I'll talk about later. After this, you can only speak to those in the same faction. So you can actually speak to someone from one if you're in the other.
Yeah.
Some of the races in the game are the orcs and trolls in the Horde and humans and dwarves in the Alliance. Each character has a class, such as priest, warrior, or mage, within their faction. And they can also choose 2 professions, such as mining, blacksmithing, or jewel crafting. In the game, there are non-player characters, also known as NPCs, who provide the quests for the players. By doing quests, players can get items, in-game money, and experience points. The stories of the game unfold through a series of quests that are unlocked by completing previous quests. There are certain quests that require a group of players to work together. So there are definitely there are definitely friends that play this together and they'll do the quests together. Yeah. So the main plot of the game is that Thrall's Horde invited the undead Forsaken to join the orcs, Tauren, and trolls. This is all very specific. The king of the human kingdom of Stormwind, named Varian Rin, mysteriously disappears, and the black dragon Onyxia mind controls the king's regent, and the ancient elemental lord Ragnaros resurfaces, endangering both the Alliance and the Horde. And in the end, the heroes of the Alliance and the Horde defeat Onyxia and send Ragnaros back to the elemental plane. That's like the main plot.
Right, yeah.
And then there are also 4 other plots going on, which I'm not going to discuss in any specifics, since that one was probably not too thrilling. So,
Okay.
But yeah, that's the main story.
Okay.
And to this day, World of Warcraft remains the world's most subscribed MMORPG, which is why I did not put it in the question. And they still had 5.5 million subscribers in 2015. Since the game was released, there have been 7 expansions, starting with the Burning Crusade released in 2007. The latest expansion was Battle for Azeroth, which was released in August 2018. So it's obviously still popular enough for them to continue adding expansions.
Yeah.
In 2012, Blizzard Entertainment began professional tournaments for World of Warcraft. There are also 2 board games inspired by the game called World of Warcraft the Board Game and World of Warcraft the Adventure Game.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I've never heard of them.
I didn't know that.
I feel like a lot of video games get board game expansion things now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in 2007, DC Comics started publishing World of Warcraft comics. And as many of you may know, in 2016, the movie Warcraft was released, which was based on the original Warcraft game.
Right.
And it is the highest grossing video game adaptation of all time, but it still lost between $15 to $40 million, so that's still not so great.
Yeah.
So that's relatively good for them.
Highest grossing, but probably not the most profitable, because it had a pretty big budget for a video game movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Duncan Jones, you could have done better. Anyway.
Ready for question 5?
I just want to clarify by that, I mean Duncan Jones is a very good director, and that's a mediocre movie.
Okay.
I don't mean that they could have picked a better director. I think he was a good choice.
Did you see it?
I saw part of it. It was fine. Anyway.
Question 5.
Yep.
Science.
Okay.
What thrown weapon uses airfoils for flight and has also been used historically as a musical instrument, fire starter, and hunting decoy?
Boomerang?
Yeah.
Yes! That's cool.
Yeah. So let's talk about boomerangs.
Okay.
All right. Boomerangs are thrown tools that spin on an axis that is perpendicular to their flight path. Some boomerangs are designed to return to their owner, but others are actually not. They are usually made of wood, but historically some have been made of bone.
Huh. Okay.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
There is evidence of boomerangs being thrown from rock art in Australia that dates back to 50,000 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And the oldest surviving boomerangs are Australian Aboriginal boomerangs found in South Australia that date back to 10,000 BC. Even though we think of boomerangs as just being Australian, they have also been found in Europe, Egypt, and North America. It is believed that the returning boomerangs stemmed from throwing sticks, which are still used by Australian Aborigines and other indigenous people, such as the Navajo Native Americans.
Huh.
Yeah. Throwing sticks were used historically to hunt small game, which, basically they didn't come back.
Right.
And
well,
it is
you pick it up when you went to get the animal you killed.
Correct.
We're going to eat, yeah.
Right. And it is actually unknown why returning boomerangs came about, but many people believe that they came about by hunters making throwing sticks incorrectly and realizing that they would return, which is not what they wanted.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, so the throwing sticks looked like boomerangs, but they had obviously different physics.
Right, yeah.
And so since this is, of course, a science question, let me get into a little bit more about the physics of it.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So the wings of a boomerang are designed as airfoils. So as the boomerang flies, it creates airflow over the wings so that they are lifted.
Mm-hmm.
The part of the aerodynamic force perpendicular to the direction of motion is called lift, and the part parallel to the direction of motion is called drag. Now, the reason why boomerangs are able to return to their owners is that they fly in a curve rather than in a straight line.
Uh-huh.
This is due to what is called gyroscopic precession. Precession is a change in the orientation of the rotational axis of a rotating body, meaning that it flies around the returning path.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So because of this, in order to get the correct flight path, the boomerang must be thrown with its wings in a more vertical plane and not sideways like a frisbee, which is what most people assume.
Right. Right, yeah, okay.
So when it's flying in this plane, the leading edge of the airfoil is pointing forward when that wing is at the top. Therefore, the greater aerodynamic lift at the top creates a torque, which is what causes the precession and the curved path.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's a little complicated.
No, I mean,
You
I
just
think
have to picture.
I can picture what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. So, an interesting fact I read is that in 1992, the German astronaut Ulf Merbold found that boomerangs function in zero gravity the same way that they do on Earth, which I think is insane.
That's cool.
Isn't it?
Where in space do you have enough room to try that out? Was he on a spacewalk?
I'm not sure where he was, but I know that that 2 other people replicated it, and one was on the International Space Station.
But in the space station or outside? Surely there is not enough space in the cramped corridors of the International Space Station to be chucking boomerangs around.
I have no clue. I would like to see a video. I should check if there's a video somewhere.
Yeah, it must have been like on a spacewalk or something.
Yeah, maybe.
That's cool.
Yeah. So today, returning boomerangs are mostly used for recreation, as you probably know.
Mm-hmm. I had one as a kid. I couldn't make it work. I didn't understand what to do.
I had this one that was made of like foam.
Yeah, mine was like cheap plastic.
I think because they're worried with kids that it'll come back and hit you in the face.
Yeah. They shouldn't have been worried. I don't think any kid can actually get a boomerang to return.
Yeah, I don't know.
I definitely couldn't.
I did like a couple times, but it was very flimsy. Anyway.
Yeah.
Most sport boomerangs are very light and can be made of a light wood or a composite material. These boomerangs usually have more than 2 wings because this allows for more lift.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So, I don't know if you've seen them, but they have ones with like 3 wings and ones with the 4 wings that like an X shape.
Yeah, yeah.
There's actually an International World Cup of boomerang throwing that they have every other year.
Of course there is.
Yeah. And Manuel Schutz from Switzerland won the individual world champion title in 2000, 2002, 2004, 2012, and 2016. And the 2012 and 2014 team competitions were won by Boomer Gang, which includes people from different countries, and I love that name.
It's awful.
Boomer Gang. It's such a bad pun.
Yeah.
I like it.
I guess we deal in bad puns here, so we have to like it. I think that's...
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Precisely. Anyway, that's boomerangs.
So, I'm 2 right answers so far.
Correct.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
Last question.
Okay.
Sounds and screens. In what 1997 sci-fi film does Emmanuel Zorg try to sell a weapon called the ZF-1, which has features including arrow launchers, a flamethrower, an ice thrower, and a targeting launcher, meaning every round returns to the same target after the first round is fired? That's just a side note.
What year?
1997.
I don't think I'm gonna get this. 97. What was the character's name?
Emmanuel Zorg.
I don't remember this scene, but Blade Runner.
No.
Shit. What is it?
The Fifth Element.
Oh, I like that movie. Damn it.
I've never seen that movie, but it's interesting.
It's good.
I have to see it now that I know almost everything about it, but it's okay. I still want to see it.
Damn. All right.
Yeah, I didn't think that was like too bad of a question. Oh, well, anyway. Moving on.
Mm-hmm.
The Fifth Element, known as Le Cinquième Élément in French, no idea if I said that right, is a sci-fi action film starring Bruce Willis, Gary Oldman, and Mila Jovovich.
Mm-hmm.
It was directed and co-written by Luc Besson. Besson began writing the script when he was just 16 years old. In 1991, he recruited Jean Girard and Jean-Claude Mézières. I don't know if I'm saying this right. They were French comic writers, and they were recruited to be the film's production designers, and their comics were a major source of inspiration for the futuristic New York City in the movie. In addition to 5 other artists, they spent a whole year creating about 8,000 drawings to create the feel of the movie. At the time, Besson approached both Bruce Willis and Mel Gibson to star in the movie, and Gibson eventually turned down the role.
Thank God. Yeah.
In December 1992, they were actually forced to stop production because they couldn't find a film company to take on their budget of nearly $100 million. That's kind of a lot now, so...
yeah.
Or it's pretty average now, I guess.
Yeah.
But back then...
That was a ton in 97.
Exactly. Yeah, this was 92.
92. Oh, yeah.
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 So, while working on another movie, Besson continued to work on the script, and in 1994, Columbia Pictures agreed to finance the film. And he was also able to reduce the budget to $90 million, which is still crazy. But he did this partially by resigning himself to getting a less expensive actor. However, while Besson was meeting with one of the producers, Willis called the producer about another film, and Besson asked to speak to him, and he told him that The Fifth Element was finally moving forward with production. Willis basically said, if I really like the script, I'll consider it.
Yeah.
And he read the script, and he did like it, and so he agreed to take on the role. Gary Oldman, who played the role of Zorg from The Question,
Yeah.
he was hired because he was in Besson's last movie. And Besson called Oldman one of the top 5 actors in the world. Just a side note, he did just win the Oscar for Best Actor for The Darkest Hour.
Yeah.
So, he is pretty great.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. For the character of Li Lu, Besson met with 200 to 300 applicants and finally chose Mila Jovovich. They actually used to write to each other in the language that Besson wrote for her character, which was called the Divine Language.
Mm-hmm.
And he eventually left his wife for her, but then they got divorced in 99. So, it didn't last very long.
Hollywood.
It was the magic of the Fifth Element language that brought them together.
Hollywood, man.
Yeah. So the film takes place in the year 2263, and it's about a cab driver and former Special Forces agent played by Bruce Willis, who becomes responsible for saving the Earth after a young woman played by Jovovich falls into his cab. The two of them have to find 4 mystical stones which contain the essences of the 4 classical elements. The movie takes its name from the 5th element, which is in the form of a human and can combine the power of the other 4 into a divine light to defeat evil. This doesn't sound very good.
It is.
Okay.
It's really good.
All right.
It's weird, but it's good.
Yeah, it does sound weird. I guess it's hard to picture just based on this. Anyway, Willis and Jovovich's characters team up to find the elements, and spoiler alert, she defeats the evil entity.
Yeah.
I'm still not sure what the evil entity is, but it sounds vague, and I'm assuming if you see the movie, it's less vague.
It's pretty vague.
Okay. But I'll believe you if you say it's good.
It is.
Okay. One interesting fact about the movie is that the protagonist and antagonist never actually share a scene.
Yeah.
Also, unlike many other sci-fi movies, most of The Fifth Element is filmed in broad daylight because Besson wanted it to have a quote-unquote cheerfully crazy look.
That's a good way to describe it.
I guess it's just very bright and
it's
sci-fi.
It's like just neon phantasmagoria. It's crazy.
Yeah. So the film has a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, so I guess it's pretty decent.
Yeah.
And if I'd had more time to write this episode, I would have watched it. Justin's mad at me.
I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
He's just disappointed.
Because he put off writing this episode and you did it in like a day.
And it was pretty good.
Uh-huh.
You don't like it?
No, it's good.
You're just upset because you only got 2.
I am upset about that, yes.
I'm sure you'll redeem yourself eventually. Anyway, we should figure out where we can watch this movie. I'm curious now.
Yeah, it must be somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth seeing.
Cool.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay.
That is the end.
All right.
All right. So you got, as we just said, you got 2 right.
Yep.
So the score is now 3-2 me. We'll see if I can maintain my lead.
Over the rest of the season.
Yes.
It's a young season, so I have time.
Yes, you have a lot of time.
Yeah.
So anyway, you can listen to us on iTunes and
Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher,
Podcast Addict,
everywhere.
wherever. And you can follow us on Facebook at Quiz and Hers.
Yep.
On Twitter, we are at Quiz and Hers. On Instagram, we're also at Quiz and Hers. Just search Quiz and Hers. You'll find us. We're there.
We're quizandhers@gmail.com.
Yeah, we're pretty much everywhere.
Yep.
Let us know if you are somewhere we are not.
Yeah, definitely. If there's like a podcast app you like or something that we're not on, let us know. We'd be happy to throw the pod up onto whatever apps you guys like.
Yeah, and feel free to tell your pub trivia team about us. And maybe we'll get you some wins.
Yeah.
And feel free to leave us a review and, let us know what you think.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. I know, if we recorded our actual lives, it would be so much better than our recording. Is that recording?
Yes, I just started it. This is our sound check.
It was me saying if we actually filmed our actual lives.